Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm so pleased that you could join us today. On behalf of the leadership here at Pikes Peak Community College, I just want to say welcome, and I'm glad that you could be here to help us honor our veterans and our military for the services, but also for sacrifices they and their families have made so all of us can enjoy the freedoms that we do each day. Here at Pikes Peak Community College, we're proud of the fact that we've served veterans and their families for more than 40 years. We have faculty and staff here that are very dedicated to working with veterans and the military to ensure their success. I believe we're also very fortunate in the community of Colorado Springs for all the partnerships that we have with the universities, the local bases, et cetera. And some of our guests today are part of those communities, so we're pleased to have them here as well. With that, I'd like to introduce our Master of Ceremonies today, Mr. Wayne Artis. Many of you know Wayne. Wayne earned his bachelor's degree with honors and a master's degree in history from the University of Delaware, where he was also elected to Phi Beta Kappa. Wayne served in the United States Army as an air defense artillery and foreign affairs officer for 22 years, retiring in the rank of lieutenant colonel. His overseas assignments included a variety of command and staff assignments in Italy, Germany, Korea, and France. His final assignment was as an assistant command director in the NORAD Command Center. He began teaching history at Pikes Peak Community College in 1992, where, in addition to his teaching duties, he currently serves as chair of the History Department, assistant to the vice president, and faculty advisor to the Colorado Commission on Higher Ed. Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you, Dr. Donaldson. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 37th Pikes Peak Community College observance of Veterans Day 2015. Please rise and remain standing for the presentation of the colors, the singing of the national anthem by the Pikes Peak Community College singers under the direction of Ms. Gail Grace, and the Pledge of Allegiance.
Present, colors.
Oh, say can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose proud stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carry, colors. About this. Post.
Please be seated. And now the U.S. Air Force Academy Band, Rampart Winds, will play the service medley. Please stand as your service anthem is played. And now the Reverend Richard Trussell will offer the invocation.
I invite you to enter with me into a spirit of prayer. As fellow Americans, diverse, yet bound together as one people, we honor all those who answered the call to serve this country. We are united with generations long past, honoring those who answered the call throughout our history, united with those who even now patrol distant places, ever vigilant, bands of our brothers and sisters, sentinels of our freedom. Transcending the bonds of time, we even extend our gratitude to future generations who will not hesitate to answer the call, pledging their lives to this land for what it stands, even if necessary, unto the last full measure of their devotion. We give deep thanks for our veterans who have completed their tours and fulfilled their service, and especially for those who bear wounds, both visible and hidden. May our nation, both its people and its government, stand by them. May we all be part of an ongoing and sustained healing process, helping to rebuild lives, forever grateful for their sacrifice. For those on active duty, protect and guide them, that they may complete their missions with valor and distinction, and uphold their families, and help us support their loved ones, anxious for their safe return. Oh, we know freedom is not free. So for our leaders, give them discernment as they make the tough decisions, and may they make these decisions, in the full knowledge of what price in human life will truly be. As they weigh both the dangers and the costs, may they be wise beyond measure. O God of ages, bear us all up in your compassion, your justice, your mercy, and your love. In thy many names we pray. Amen.
In 1921, an unknown World War I American soldier was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. This site, located on the grounds of what was once the home of General Robert E. Lee, sits on a hillside overlooking the Potomac River and the city of Washington. It has become the focal point of remembrance for Americans' veterans. Similar ceremonies occurred earlier in Great Britain and France, where an unknown soldier was buried in each nation's highest place of honor. In Great Britain, Westminster Abbey; in France, the Arc de Triomphe. These memorial acts took place on November 11th, giving universal recognition to the celebrated ending of World War I fighting at 11 a.m., November 11th, 1918, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. The day became known as Armistice Day. Armistice Day officially received its name in America in 1926 through a congressional resolution. It became a national holiday 12 years later by similar congressional action. If World War I, with 10 to 12 million deaths, with an average death rate of 5,000 military service members per day, was the war to end all wars, November 11th might still be called Armistice Day. But only a few years after the proclamation of the holiday, war broke out again in Europe and Asia. 16.5 million Americans took part. 407,000 of them died in service, more than 292,000 in battle. The total number of civilian and military dead in that war was between 70 and 100 million, with half of the casualties being civilian. Realizing that veterans of World War II and Korea also helped to preserve peace, Congress took up a bill to make this day an occasion to honor those who have served America in all wars. In 1954, President Eisenhower signed the bill proclaiming November 11th Veterans Day. The focal point for official National Veterans Day ceremonies continues to be the Memorial Amphitheater built around the Tomb of the Unknowns at Arlington. Every year, in addition to the President of the United States, other dignitaries come to honor the commitment of our veterans through appropriate public ceremonies. Thus, we at Pikes Peak Community College do annually pay tribute to our veterans on this most important observance. Would the veterans in the audience please rise? And shall we give them all a round of applause? Thank you. At this point in the ceremony, we are offering any individual who would like to rise and mention the name of a family member or friend who is a veteran. I'll start. My father, William Walter Artis, Delaware National Guard. Would anyone else? Thank you.
Father and brother, both with the same name of Gail Eugene Bedford, one Merchant Marine, the other one United States Army.
Thank you.
Father Curtis Lane Cole, United States Marine Corps, World War II Pacific. Bob Cole, World War II Marine Corps Pacific. Brother Kurt, two-time Vietnam vet Army.
My father, Nicholas Luckett, Air Force. My brother, Lawrence Luckett, Air Force. My uncle, Hank Luckett, Marine Corps. My father, Frederick William Shields, United States Navy, Seaman, Second World War. And my uncle, Ernest Quino, Army Air Corps, Second World War, and theater. And my brother, Richard Allen Shields, United States Air Force.
My father, Alfred E. Cullen, 11th Armored Cavalry, died in Vietnam, 1968.
My father, Robert Francis, was Navy, and my brother, Randall, Vietnam War.
Card, Vietnam, grandfather. My father, Eli Espinosa, U.S. Army, and my youngest brother, Sean Espinosa, U.S. Marines.
My husband, Blair Donaldson, U.S. Army Special Forces.
Like Ray Nelson, Glenn Smith, U.S. Army. My father, U.S. Leonard Wareheim, U.S. Army. My stepdad, Lee Beecham, U.S. Air Force. My sister, Joanne Golan, U.S. Air Force. Other sister, Linda Lumberman, Army. And my stepson, he's in the Navy right now.
Go ahead.
My father, Claude Johnson, retired Vermont Air National Guard. My cousin, Tom Powers, retired U.S. Air Force. My wife's grandfather, Frank Mazzarelli, World War II vet.
Lieutenant Tyler Brown, killed in action, 14th September 2004. Private Dennis Miller, killed in action, 10th November 2004. Sergeant Jason Hendricks, killed in action, 16th February 2005. Sergeant Alexander Crackle, killed in action 24 February 2005. Private Sam Henry, killed in action 25 February 2005. Captain Sean Grimes, killed in action 4 March 2005. Sergeant Echo, killed in action 4 March 2005. Corporal Stephen McGowan, killed in action 4 February 2005. Specialist Wade Twining, killed in action 4 March 2005.
action Korean War.
Thank you. And now the Pikes Peak Highlanders will render Amazing Grace.
Really quick. Sorry.
Yes.
My father, Ernest Alton Q, is away from the South Pacific. Thank you.
I'm privileged to introduce our speaker today. Lieutenant Colonel Michelle E. Johnson is currently serving as Chief of Cadet Development at the U.S. Air Force Academy Center for Character and Leadership Development in Colorado Springs, Colorado. She is a cyberspace support officer with over 20 years of service. She received her commission in 1995 as a distinguished graduate from the ROTC Training Corps at St. Michael's College. She has served in a wide variety of assignments in technical areas. She has also commanded training units and as well as the Air Force Commander, Air Officer Commanding for Cadet Squadron 16 at the Air Force Academy. She has also found time to earn a PhD in educational leadership at the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs. Welcome, Colonel Johnson.
Good morning. Thank you for that welcome. I should have asked to speak before they played Amazing Grace. That was an amazing rendition. So how about a round of applause for our musicians this morning? Thank you for inviting me to speak, and thank you to everyone who is here to honor our veterans. Millions of Americans have fought and died on battlefields here and abroad to defend our freedoms and our way of life. Today, our troops continue to make the ultimate sacrifices. And even as we lose troops, more Americans step forward to say, I am ready to serve. They follow in the footsteps of generations of fine Americans. They are committed to something bigger than themselves. Today, Veterans Day is a celebration to honor all of Americans' veterans for their patriotism, their love of country, and willingness to serve and sacrifice for the common good. And while it's a day for reflection and for remembering, it's also a day for celebration. I know we asked the veterans to stand before, but I would also like to ask the family members of veterans who named their family and friends before to please rise to be recognized. Family members of veterans, please rise. We often honor our veterans, but I'd also like to honor you and say thank you. We know you've lived through difficult times as well and have often taken the heavy load to keep the home fires burning. Thank you for what you've done. I also have to recognize my own support structure for the last 20 plus years. My husband is standing over here to my left. He's an instructor here at Pikes Peak Community College, and I think he's brought his class with him too this morning. And also I have my 3 sons sitting in the back left row, Connor, Nathaniel, and Noah, and they've been a wonderful support structure for me over the last 20 plus years, so thank you. It's easy to recognize our veterans as active duty service members who are visible due to our ongoing operations overseas. However, the majority of veterans we honor today no longer are serving or wearing a military uniform. Many have gone on to other professions. Whether they wear the military uniform today or wore it months, years, or even decades ago, veterans represent an unwavering dedication and exemplify the highest ideals of service to our nation. We are lucky to live in a community who supports our active duty and retired soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines. Some of our local 4th graders did a writing assignment leading up to Veterans Day, and I wanted to share what a few of them wrote when asked what a veteran is to them. Here's what some of them had to say. A veteran is one of the most important people in our country. Veterans can be in the sky, underwater, or on water. The Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Air Force, Marines, and one more I can't think of, even though he got all of them. All these people help us when we are in need, and we should all thank them. A veteran to me is someone who is fighting for our freedom, like my dad. They are strong to leave their family behind. They die for us. They fight for us. They risk everything for us. Veterans are very great people. Whenever I think of one, I think of my great-grandpa who fought in World War II, and he's very lucky because he's still alive. All veterans are important, kind, and trustworthy. I think a veteran can be anyone, but only if they are a true fighter. I also think people serve because they love everyone and are willing to die. Veterans are the whole reason why we are a free country. They had trust in their hearts. They are brave, kind, loyal, and honest. We celebrate this because they made where we live have freedom. A veteran is a man of many things. One thing is, a veteran is brave. Many veterans have been in violent wars and terrible fights. One veteran I know is my dad, who is serving in Afghanistan, plotting against bad people. And finally, this was one of my favorites, a veteran is a cool dude, a helper, a nice person, a risk taker, a hard worker, and my hero. It is truly wonderful to see how honest and accurate children can be in their descriptions of veterans. Personally, when I think of veterans, I think of several different groups of people. I think of the retirees I see in the commissary in the grocery store wearing their World War II, Korean War, or Vietnam veteran hats proudly. I think of my oldest son's Cub Scout den leader, who Skyped into all of the Scout meetings while he was deployed for a year so he could stay involved in the den's activities and to see his son earning Scouting awards. I think of 2 police officers I know who continue to protect and serve their local communities even after they each served for more than 20 years as enlisted airmen. I think of the 8th grade science teacher who went back to school after retiring so he could spend the next chapter of his life continuing to give back to our kids and our community. And finally, I think of the young soldier, sailor, airman, and Marine who are taking classes in the evening or during their lunch breaks while working full-time to support their family because they have recognized how important furthering their education is to their future. Education plays an important part for all of our service members, and that is certainly true here in Colorado Springs. Recently, I was informed that 28.5% of the student population here at Pikes Peak Community College is comprised of active duty military, veterans, and their dependents. Furthermore, across Colorado, nearly 8% of the student populations at our University of Colorado campuses are veterans. That's more than 4,000 students across the CU system. And here in Colorado Springs at UCCS, that concentration is even larger. Nearly 20% of the student population at UCCS have served in the military or are currently serving. We are veterans in this room today, on this campus, and in the classrooms across Colorado. And whether we wear the uniform in the classroom today or wore it long ago on the battlefield, veterans represent a fundamental truth. It's not the powerful weapons that make our military the greatest in the world. It's not the sophisticated aircraft, the missiles, the rockets, the satellites, the cyber technology that make us the most advanced. The true strength of our military is the spirit and skill of our soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, and Coast Guardsmen. And the true strength of all of our armed forces is seen in the men and women who have worn and now wear the uniform of our nation's military. As General Patton said, wars may be fought by weapons, but they are won by men. And today I would add that they are won by men and women. Veterans Day 2015 finds us a nation at war, and we've been at war for much of the 20 years that I have served in the Air Force. Our citizens, our moms and dads, sons and daughters, brothers and sisters, and in my family, 2 cousins are currently serving. Both of my grandfathers served in World War II. My father-in-law and my brother-in-law and my cousin also served. They continue to answer the call to support and defend our nation and our freedoms by serving around the world in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. There's no mystery behind the endurance and the success of our military members. In every generation, from the Revolutionary War to this very hour, brave Americans have stepped forward and served honorably in the armed forces of the United States, and every one of you deserves the recognition and admiration of our entire country. Personally, I would like to highlight and recognize 2 examples of courage and sacrifice. On April 29th, 2010, our Air Force Chief of Staff pinned 3 silver stars, 5 bronze stars with valor, 3 bronze stars, and 2 Purple Hearts on 11 combat controllers from the 22nd Special Tactics Squadron for their action during various deployments to Afghanistan. 2 of the silver stars were presented to a single airman, Staff Sergeant Sean Harville, for essentially placing himself in harm's way on multiple confrontations with the enemy and aiding in the recovery of service members and sensitive equipment from the field of battle. It is truly a pleasure to be among these great airmen, General Norman Schwartz said, who accomplished enormous feats without very much fanfare or pageantry, alongside Army, Navy, and Marine Corps Special Operations Forces. At his ceremony, Sergeant Harville gave an almost aw-shucks response to being recognized for doing his job, and he said, "I feel kind of guilty for taking up the general's time because there are so many other guys out there doing the same thing every day." And that's probably also how Chief Master Sergeant Richard Etchberger felt atop one of the tallest mountains in Laos on March 11th, 1968, just doing his job. As a ground radar superintendent during the Vietnam War, Chief Etchberger and a small team of his fellow airmen manned a tiny classified radar station guiding aircraft to targets in North Vietnam. Chief Etchberger died that day, but not before single-handedly staving off the enemy and saving the lives of at least 3 airmen. For his heroic feat, President Obama posthumously awarded Chief Etchberger our nation's highest military decoration, the Medal of Honor, on September 21st, 2010. Proudly, more than 26 million veterans are still alive today. We know them as our fathers and mothers, our uncles, or perhaps our next-door neighbors. Similar to Sergeant Harville and Chief Etchberger, they represent the finest men and women America has to offer. And for most, their time in uniform represents a defining moment in their lives. Military service gave these individuals a sense of commitment that lasts a lifetime. Whether they wore the uniform in wartime or peacetime, they felt a new sense of responsibility. They came to understand the price of freedom because they could put names and faces to it. Freedom was not just an abstract concept. It was the bond of loyalty they forged with their buddies in the ranks. Recently, we lost one of our members at the Air Force Academy. Last month, Major Phyllis Pelkey, who served as an academic instructor as well as the superintendent's aide, was killed in the line of duty in Kabul, Afghanistan, in support of the NATO-led Operation Freedom Sentinel. Originally from New Mexico, Major Pelkey joined the Air Force after teaching high school for a few years and deciding that she wanted to serve her country. Major Pelkey's story really hit home for me. She was a daughter, a wife, a mother to 2 sons, and she was a fellow military officer. Major Pelkey was committed to something bigger than herself, and she served her country well. She leaves behind a legacy of service and valor for her relatives, as well as for her Air Force family. So today, it is our privilege to say thank you to all of America's veterans for your quiet courage and exemplary service, to let you know we are grateful and acknowledge your many sacrifices and accomplishments. Veterans like you are a part of a legacy to be proud of, and those of you who contribute to this legacy must never be taken for granted. To honor our veterans, we must continue to keep the promises that we have made. We must care for those who are injured in the service to our country. We must support the families of our deployed members. We must honor and remember those who have died. In closing, I'd like to read a brief passage from President Abraham Lincoln's second inaugural address, which was delivered March 4th, 1865, as the Civil War was nearing its end. With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, to care for him who shall have borne the battle, and for his widow and his orphan, to do all which may achieve and cherish a just and lasting peace among ourselves and with all nations. President Lincoln's words have stood the test of time and serve today as a commitment to never forget our veterans and those injured in our nation's defense and the families of those who have died in service. Veterans, you have done your duty to your families, to your communities, to your fallen comrades, and to your country. You've served honorably with great distinction, and we can never say it enough. For your service in war and peace, God bless you, and thank you.
I'd like to ask everyone to rise as the U.S. Air Force Academy band, Rampart Winds, plays a medley of America the Beautiful and God Bless America. Please be seated. Your presence today honors not only the veterans of past wars and those now serving, but more importantly, it underscores our commitment to their memory, and especially to the memory of those who gave their lives in service to their country. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our Veterans Day observance. Our special thanks go to the Highland Pipers, the Pikes Peak Community College Singers, our guest speaker, Colonel Johnson, the U.S. Air Force Academy Band, Rampart Winds, and to the NORAD and U.S. Northcom Joint Color Guard. And thanks to everyone at Pikes Peak Community College who worked to make this ceremony possible. We honor all our veterans and their sacrifices, and remember that our freedom comes at the highest cost. Would you please stand? Retire the colors. Thank you. This concludes the ceremony.